Hello everyone and welcome to Vulture as a totem and a spirit guide. I've actually based this video off turkey vulture because it's the species nearest and dearest to my heart. But most of this wisdom will apply to vulture in general. As always, if your specific vulture is different, then you're welcome to contact me to set up a session to receive a more specific interpretation about what your vulture represents for you and your journey. Also, I've actually decided in this video, instead of making two separate videos, I've decided to combine the information on the totem and the spirit guide because they're actually quite similar. I'm going to give you some specifics about what it means to be a vulture person, or vulture's your totem, but for the most part, all of the messages I'll be sharing with you from vulture, if vulture's your current spirit guide, then one or more of those messages will be pertinent to your current challenges, where if vulture's your totem, then these messages will probably represent some of the larger challenges, the bigger issues you'll deal with in your journey and the way in which you can resolve and move through them. So first off, you wouldn't think of vulture as being a very, warm and fuzzy critter and a bearer of beautiful messages, but vulture's actually shared some of the most beautiful wisdom with me, some of the things that have helped me personally grow the most, which you just wouldn't expect because, we think of vulture as kind of like the celestial shark, circling the poor doomed soul in the desert, ready to die and waiting to swoop down and eat it. Or we think of them, hunched over a freshly turned grave in a graveyard. But for the most part, most of their messages don't have much to do with death, and they're actually, again, very beautiful. In fact, turkey vulture's scientific name is Cathartes aura, which means golden purifier, because it has this habit of stretching out its wings in the dawn, and they become backlit with this beautiful glow, and they do act as a purifier. They're scavengers who take care of all of the death in the environment and recycle it. So, starting with vulture people, you think of vultures, they're not very aesthetically pleasing birds on the ground, and yet we recognize them in the air as so beautiful. Vulture people will have a beauty that is hard put for people to describe. Everyone who sees them will know that they're beautiful, and they'll say that they're beautiful, but when you're asked to describe why the vulture person is beautiful, it will be difficult for people because it's not a classic beauty. It's not a Sports Illustrated model type beauty. It is something far more complex, far deeper, and with as much to do with the spirit as it is for the physicality. Vulture people also come off as regal, as knowing, as wise. They're also difficult for people to understand. And part of this is because vulture people do tend to gravitate towards occupations that have something to do with death. They're the morticians, the coroners, the murder investigators, the tombstone carvers, the obituary writers. They're the people for whom death doesn't hold the same terror as it does for the rest of us. For many vulture people, death is just another side of life, and they can experience it daily and not be as frightened of it. It's not that they're not scared to die, but it is a far different feeling. They have a familiarity with death. And many people have a hard time looking past the vulture person's occupation. They just kind of see this mysterious, maybe slightly gothy, dark presence, where really vulture people, when you do get to see the inside of them, which isn't often, they're actually kind of warm and fuzzy in there. Now, as far as messages go, the first thing that vulture wants us to look at, and for many of us this is the most powerful message we can receive in our lifetime, is whether or not we are scattering our energies, if we're using our energy wisely. Vulture can float for hours without flapping its wings even once. it doesn't waste its internal resources trying to get someplace it doesn't really need to be. It doesn't try to force prey to appear. It just knows that when prey shows up, it will find its way there. And so for many of us, this resonates with our lack of trust. Most of us have a very hard time trusting that what we want is going to come to us if we just tell the universe we want it and then tell the universe that we're open to receiving guidance on how to receive it. What we do instead is say, this is what we want, but we don't know how to get it, and so we're going to worry, or we're going to try to force something into being that isn't ready to happen. And guys, it's really hard to force something into being. In fact, if you're noticing you're trying to push something into existence and it isn't happening, back away. That's the universe's way of telling you you're not meant to have this at this time, or you're not ready for it. The few times where I was foolish enough to try to force something, I ended up losing it because I wasn't ready for it, and the process was really quite painful. So what Vulture tells us to do is put it out there, say, universe, we want it, and now we're going to wait, and we're going to be blissful while we're waiting. And we know that when you tell us what to do, we will put every ounce of our energy into that, and we'll get it. In fact, Vulture's one of the only birds that can fold its wings above the horizon line. So when it does flap its wings, it gives it this incredibly powerful forward thrust, and it can really move quickly towards what it wants. And so what it's telling us here is that we know that when we do receive the guidance from the universe about this is what we're supposed to do, then we do that, and it's going to get us where we need to go very quickly. Also, many of us, while we are waiting for this thing that we want to manifest, the best thing that we can do is sit down and make a list of what we can actually do now. What do we have control over? And then put your energy into that. Sometimes we're just not getting what we want, and we don't know how to make it happen. So we can make a list of things that we can do, put our energy there, continue to make affirmations about what we want, and we'll get there. This is far better than driving ourselves crazy, worrying, or trying to do a billion different things that are doing nothing but wearing us out. Now, vultures have an extremely acute sense of smell. And so for vulture people, this means there's a tendency towards clairolfaction, which is psychic smell. For some of you, for rare people, this will mean that you will have an actual psychic experience with smell where somebody will smell like a plate of freshly baked cookies to you, for example, to tell you that they're good people, or they will smell absolutely rotten to you to tell you that they're bad. You may find their cologne is just so off-putting you can't stand it. That's a clairolfactory signal right there. Some of us receive psychic messages through scent. I've mentioned in other videos, I do sometimes experience the smell of embalming fluid before somebody's going to die. And yes, that is every bit as unsettling as you would imagine. For most people with clairolfaction, however, what this manifests as is a very deep gut hunch, where your gut will tell you very, very loudly whether or not it wants you to do something. There may also be very visceral experiences of memory where you can remember details in a really, really clear way that far exceeds other people's ability, because scent and memory are linked. So if you are experiencing Vulture as a spirit guide, what this is telling you is to pay attention to the memories that surface, and also to trust your gut hunches. They will be far stronger for you at this time, and it would be very wise for you to pay attention to them. And you'll know, it's that seizing in the gut, or that kind of feeling like, ooh, this is not good for me. Now, Vulture also has excellent vision. It's 8 times stronger than a human's, and it would need to be, so it can, spot prey dying miles away and go over to that site. And so for vulture people, this means there's a tendency towards clairvoyance, where you receive a lot of your wisdom through dreams, through visions, through things you can see. So, cloud formations will look like something to you, or words will just leap off a page, or a particular picture will grab your attention. You'll also be a body language expert, chances are, where you're able to really interpret somebody's body language with a high degree of accuracy. If Vulture is your current spirit guide, you're going to want to pay attention to any guidance you seem to be receiving in a visual fashion, so things you can see that keep showing up over and over again. And again, you'll want to pay attention to body language. Scientists believe that vultures actually pass silent signals back and forth to each other through nonverbal communication, through body language while they're flying, because vultures don't sing or speak. So the way that they would talk to each other is through body language. And so you'll want to pay attention to people's nonverbal cues. You'll also want to pay attention to that sensation that even though somebody is telling you one thing, that they actually feel or mean something else, or that a situation is other than it seems, because that is likely the case here. If we're talking about clairvoyance, part of clairvoyance is being aware of the truth of something in spite of how it appears. And so Vulture would be telling you to pay attention to that. Now, Vulture has a really beautiful and loving message to share with those of us who are body image conscious, which is, at least here in the States, most of us. I grew up in a family that was so body image conscious, it made me absolutely neurotic. I was bulimic for a good portion of my life, in fact, and I am no longer. But I am well aware of the pressure we place on ourselves to force ourselves into this package that fits what we believe society considers to be beauty. And if you look at the vulture, I mean, it's got this blocky black body and these ungainly naked feet and this slick pink head. You see it up close and you kind of think, ugh. But when you see it in the air, it's extraordinary. It has this amazing wingspan. And the way that they soar and the way that they circle, it's magical. I live in an area with a lot of vultures, and oftentimes I'll see a whole flock circling over my subdivision. And I'll go outside and just watch for an hour. You've got 20, 30 of these birds just doing these lazy circles in the sky, and it's lovely. And in fact, most people will mistake vultures for hawks, because when they fly, they're so beautiful, everybody assumes it must be something more dignified, more appropriate than a vulture, and so it must be a hawk, when really it's a turkey vulture. So one of the things that Vulture teaches us here is that our value is not in how we appear physically. It's in who we are and what we do. And vultures are really valuable. They're nature's great recyclers. Without them, our roads would be crowded with all sorts of unsightly dead creatures. So we really do need these guys. And again, they give us this beautiful picture when they're up there in the sky. More than this, however, we think that when we are experiencing somebody and we're judging them physically beautiful or not, we think it's because they are physically beautiful or not, and our eyes are telling us this. When in fact, this isn't exactly true. We really judge people based on their energy far more than most of us realize. When you look at someone and think that they're beautiful, a large part of what you're experiencing is their energy. You are deciding whether or not they feel good to you, and then you're lining that up with how they appear. Somebody can be absolutely gorgeous physically, but if they don't feel good to us on an energetic level, they're not going to register as looking good to us. So it really is true that we are valued for more than we appear. We are valued for who we are. And Vulture wants us to realize that and stop obsessing. Again, use your resources wisely. Do not spend time worrying about your physical appearance, especially when it's not something that you can change. Now, Vulture, as I mentioned, is a scavenger. It feeds off that which has died in order to nourish itself. It also does something rather unsavory in our mind, which is that it eliminates on its own feet and legs. It's one of the only critters that does this. Part of this serves a cooling function, and vulture people, you may notice that no matter how hot it is outside, as long as your tootsies are cool, you'll feel good. But the other thing that happens is that vulture's stomach contains bacteria that, or chemicals that destroy harmful bacteria, and the resistance to botulism is thousands of times higher than ours. It would have to be, considering what it eats. And so when it eliminates on its feet and legs, it's actually cleansing them. When you consider what it's been walking around in, it would need this. So what's represented here, considering that it nourishes itself through death and it cleanses its legs with waste, it's asking us to look at what needs to die in our lives so that we can move forward. We nourish ourselves by letting something go, particularly something that is now toxic for us, a relationship that is no longer serving us, a job that we no longer enjoy or at which we have kind of hit our growth limit. Maybe it's a place we're living where we're ceasing to find joy. Anything in our life that is holding us back, when you think of legs as being the representation of forward momentum, these things need to go. They need to experience a death so that something new can be born. And vulture actually is a very clean bird, despite what I've just told you. It loves water, it loves to bathe, and water is representative of our emotions. And vulture is telling you your emotions probably need some cleaning. Your belief system probably needs some cleaning. Beliefs need to die too. If we're doing things right, we'll go through a whole series of beliefs in our life. We'll let go of our limitations more and more and more until we realize that we really don't have any limitations. And we can believe whatever we choose and make that come to pass. So we have to let go of a lot of old junk before we can really become who we want to be. And vulture helps us do that. Now, I mentioned that vulture does have a unique digestive system. Again, it can eat just about anything. And when vulture shows up as a spirit guide, you might notice some changes in your digestion. You might notice that foods that you used to enjoy suddenly make you sick, or foods that used to make you sick, you suddenly enjoy and crave, in which case you're supposed to listen to your body here. Our body is the ultimate decider of what is good for us. It knows, and this often goes against conventional wisdom. For example, I cannot tolerate coconut, I cannot eat avocado, and I'm allergic to broccoli. I know, it sounds weird, right? These are superfoods, and yet even though they're superfoods and everybody tells me to eat them, every time I try to eat them, I become very, very sick. And yet, for the most part, I can eat just about everything else and be fine, even things that I'm told I shouldn't have. One of the other things that vulture does, though, is it brings into light foods that have emotional effects upon us. One of the things I also can't tolerate is sugar. When vulture is around, I notice that I have a heightened sensitivity to sugar. It makes me cranky, it gives me palpitations, I can't sleep, I'm tired. During times when I'm not really seeing it that much, I can pretty much eat a whole plate of cookies and be fine. It really varies. Vulture will tell you, though, whether or not you can just kind of go to town or whether or not you really need to listen to your body. And you know this because you will feel it in your system. You will either feel really good eating something or you won't. So vulture is basically saying, pay attention to those signals. The other thing, when vulture shows up for you as a spirit guide, is to pay attention to your digestion. We are not meant to have irritable bowel syndrome. We are not meant to have issues with elimination. And vulture will tell you that if you are having trouble with these things, it's because, well, either your life is not nourishing you. If you're nauseous and vomiting, it's because you're rejecting life. Your life is not pleasant. You can't stomach it. You're trying to throw it up, get rid of it. If you are unable to pass stuff through your system, then vulture is telling you to pay attention to how you are not letting go. You've got an old wound you're holding on to, an old belief you're holding on to, a grudge, something. This pattern often happens in people who are hyper-conscious about their diets and can't stop beating themselves up for what they ate the day before. And so the body goes, oh, I guess I'm not supposed to let go of this. So I'm starting to notice more and more commercials for prescription drugs for constipation. It's because as a culture, we cannot let things go. We're very hard on ourselves and we're very repressed emotionally. Vulture says it's not that big a deal. Let it die. Move forward. Now, the last thing that Vulture teaches us has to do with its lack of voice. Vulture people will usually be soft-spoken, or if they are big talkers, they won't talk a lot about what's going on with them personally. It will be very hard to get them to open up. They're not really people who tend to speak openly about what's going on inside them. They tend to be kind of closed mouth about that sort of thing. And again, they will usually tend to be people of a few words. If Vulture is showing up as a spirit guide, you're asked to remember that Vulture can't sing and it can't speak. It can force air through its bill and hiss. So here we have this bird that is, well, rather ugly, quote unquote, on the outside, and yet it is beautiful in the air. And it can't talk, and yet it manages to communicate its needs to the other birds. What we're being told to do is pay attention again to who we are, what we are doing, not what we say, because words can be empty, and they oftentimes are not reflective of what's really going on inside us. And also, just talking about what you want to do doesn't mean anything. You can say all the beautiful things in the world, but unless you put action behind it, they're just words. And Vulture tells you that you need to focus on action. You need to focus on creation. Those are the things that matter. Not what you say, not how you look. Now, my darlings, I hope this has answered all your questions about what it means to be Vulture person, or when Vulture shows up for you. And if not, if you have any more questions, please feel free to contact me directly for a session. I'm really easy to find. You can get me here on YouTube by messaging me through Gmail or Google+. I'm on Facebook at Ravenlight Holistic Healing, or you can reach me through my website, which is www.ravenlightholistichealing.com. Cheers, my darlings, and have a wonderful day.